These guys are both currently sitting in the House of Representatives. So these are pros. We're going to go right at them. So here's Bill Decker.
Question for Mr. Bullard. What have we done for the Florida Keys?
Well, it's funny you mention that. I think everyone in here is a fan of civics or a fan of politics. And we have to understand, at the end of the day, all 120 members of the House of Representatives, all 40 senators, all vote on Florida initiatives that ultimately affect every citizen, all 18.5 million. So when the question comes up, what have I done for the Florida Keys? I'll be very specific though. I sat on the Higher Ed Appropriations Committee this year. So my role as as one of the Democratic leaders on education, but more specifically as a member of that committee, and how it affected the Keys specifically was as the governor's trying to roll back dollars for higher education. I was trying to serve as the stopgap. And as a matter of fact, in the wee hours of the budget committee hearings, as we were going back and forth over what the cut would look like, the Democrats on that committee were able to save $7 million that went to higher education and specifically Keys Community College. So although there was still an impact and still a cut, the blow was not as severe as it could have been had I not been there. Thank you.
I'll just follow up on that specific question, Mr. Bullard. Thank you for traveling all the way to the U.S. tonight. How much time have you actually spent in the Florida Keys during your term, your current term, but also in the past in general? And what is your impression of the Keys?
Well, the answer is that I've been down here on multiple occasions. The geographical reality of my district is that I literally bump up right against the gateway to the Keys. Cardstown Road and 344th Street are really the cutoff between myself and Rep. Saunders' districts in terms of geographical location. Of course, for the last 4 years, I've spent the majority of the time serving my district, being president in my district, because beyond the scope of Tallahassee, that's our responsibility. However, much like many of you, I've enjoyed the fun and sun of Monroe County on multiple occasions, both as a child in my mid-years and as an adult now. What is my take on the Keys? Phenomenal view. I mean, what I found in my travels throughout Florida, and specifically throughout District 39, is that everyone is giving a consistent message. We want to see a better Florida. So what can we collectively do to make that happen? And I think that people of Monroe County, people of Henry County, Collier, and those in Dade have a collective energy and desire to see things progress here in Florida. And they understand that the current leadership, both in the governor's mansion, in the Florida House and the Florida Senate, have not done their job in trying to make that happen. So I hope to be able to work with them to try and facilitate that.
This question is for Ron. As you can tell from the question so far, everybody, hometown, you know, it's what the Florida Keys. As you know, in Tallahassee, they can almost care less about the Florida Keys with 77,000 people down here. So it's always been a struggle, but you've spent a lot of time up in Tallahassee, and you've been able to elevate some of our problems down here. What's the key to working with Tallahassee to get them to take attention of the Florida Keys, even though this particular position doesn't represent just the Keys?
Well, I think the important thing for me is the budget. I chaired the budget committee in my previous tenure. I'm still on the committee because the answer to most issues is money, whether it's education or healthcare or jobs. If you don't have money, you're not going to get anything. I used to compare it to being the gas station. You can have a fancy car without gasoline, it's not going to go anywhere. You can have a wonderful program or project without money, it's not going to happen. So my main focus in the legislature has been on money, whether it's been funding for Florida Keys Community College, whether it's been for our public school system, and lately for wastewater funding. You know, this year, despite us having a relatively small population, the Florida Keys got $50 million for wastewater funding through bonding. And that is just the first, hopefully, segment of another $150 million to come. And so even though we are disproportionately small, if you know how to talk the budget talk and get along with the other side, that's the strength. And I think that's part of my strength. Part of my strength is my district. I have a district that's 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, and 1/3 no party. Obviously, I wouldn't do as well as I do if I did not get along with all sides. And in Tallahassee, you know, the Republicans control the legislature. If you don't know how to talk the budget talk, and if you don't have the respect from the other side, you're not going to get anything done. Just this year, with the budget for the wastewater, the governor recommended zero. It was not in the governor's budget. We got the $50 million House budget. In the Senate, we had zero. And so we had to go to the Senate to actually get in the final budget. And that's how we got the $50 million. And hopefully next year we'll get another 50 and 50 after that. But if you don't have somebody who understands the budget, you're not going to get anything. You'll get a zero. And so I think that's my strength, is my budget background, my ability to cross party lines, and to work with all people involved.
Ron, this is a question to you, and it talks both to the budget and to your role as minority leader and the head of the Democratic Party in the House. The Florida Democratic Party has essentially led the charge against legislation that was passed in the 2011 legislative session requiring participants in the Florida retirement system to contribute 3% of their pay to their own pension program. Most Floridians do not have a defined benefit, a pension program. Why have the Democrats led the charge against this legislation and against requiring pension participants from contributing to their own pension plans?
Well, when this plan was proposed, the governor asked me to come meet with him, and we talked about the plan. He asked me to support it. And his rationale was that because pension benefits in the private sector are not the same as the public sector, that they should be made comparable. And I said, well, Governor, does that mean you're going to make the salaries comparable? He said, no. My point being that a lot of people went to work for public entities because of the benefit package. They're actually making less in many cases than they could have made in the private sector. But they went to work for a promise. And the promise was if you put a certain amount of years in as a teacher, a firefighter, a nurse, that when you retire, you know what you're going to get when you retire. And so I believe definitely in the defined benefit, because I think you should know when you retire that you're going to be able to make it. And to me, it was unfair to not pay comparable salaries, but yet to go ahead and try to take money out of their paycheck. And I know people in the Keys, you take 3% from their paycheck, and that might be the difference between making it and not making it. So I oppose that 3% deduction because I think it's a promise made that you're breaking. You know, if you're working currently in the retirement system, and you've been promised a benefit, I think you're entitled to that benefit. Now, if you want to make a perspective down the road, that's something we can look at. But for the people in the retirement system today, I think it's a breach of trust to take away a benefit that they were promised when they went to work.
As House Minority Leader, you were kind of a lightning rod for a lot of the Republican Party attacks. And sometimes that got in the way of some of your legislation. Do you see that carrying over if you were elected to the Senate? How would you deal with that?
Well, one of the reasons I'm running, and most of you know, I have 2 more years left in my House term. Dwight had 4 years, I have 2 years left. But I chose to run for the Senate because it's an open seat, his mother's retiring. And I thought that in the Senate I could get more done. There are 40 senators and 120 House members. So number one, there's 1/3 as many senators. But number two, senators tend to be less partisan. Why? Because their Senate districts are 3 times the size of a House district. You can have a House district like Dwight Bullard's that's strongly Democrat, very few Republicans. My district's a little different. In the Senate, it tends to be less partisan because their districts are so big that they have to take care of Democrats and Republicans. So I like the Senate, and the Miami Herald endorsement, which hopefully most of you saw, one of the statements about me was that I was the best suited for this position because I'd be more suited for, in their words, the more collegial Senate. The Senate is more collegial. It means you can work across party lines to get things done. I was able to do it somewhat in the House. I mean, we didn't get the $50 million because of Democrats. You know, we got the $50 million because Republicans in charge, including Speaker Cannon, a friend of our friend here in Scales, helped us. I couldn't have done it by myself, and I've never claimed all the credit for getting the $50 million. I get some of the credit, but certainly, you know, our friends at the Aqueduct Authority, the county, they had a lot to do with it. But I think in the Senate, where you can set aside that partisanship and get more done. You know, I've had a lot of senators on both sides say that they want me to win. We have a senator that's going to be in the Senate that now represents Hendry County. She's Republican. She's helping me in Hendry County. She's going to be in the Senate from a different area. I have House members of the Republicans because they said of the people running in the Democratic primary, and the next senator will be a Democrat. You know, of the people running, they'd rather work with me, mainly because of my budget background. Because it's a fight in Tallahassee for dollars. And if you have a region, you want to work together to get things done, that's what they want me to do.
Hey, Mr. Bullard, I have a question for you. Today is the first day of early voting, and so people are heading out to the polls. During the last legislative cycle, Florida made some changes to its elections laws, specifically restrictions on nonpartisan early voting drives, pretty restrictive measures for people who have criminal backgrounds. I'd like to know what your position is on that, and whether you agree with those mandated changes, and if not, what you would do or what you would initiate to see some change in that legislation.
Well, speaking specifically to House Bill 1355, which was the change back in 2011, I adamantly opposed it. Not only did I adamantly oppose it, but I worked my butt off trying to make sure that individuals in my community understood the ramifications of it. The idea that the Girl Scouts of America, the Boy Scouts of America, the League of Women Voters were now being penalized for trying to give people what is their fundamental constitutional right as an American citizen is criminal. And the reality that not only in Florida, but in some 32 other states, there were other voter ID, voter suppression, voter restriction laws passed, really should alarm us as citizens of this country. Because as taxpayers, as citizens, as people of the state of Florida who are trying to be participants in this thing called government, the idea that laws like that can pass and that there is not a raucous response by everybody, regardless of party affiliation, is alarming and is a serious indicator of the potential robbing of our democracy. And on the back of my literature, I say that democracy is what it's always been, especially when I have to teach the children that I teach, when I teach American history and American government. A government by the people, for the people. So when you cut out one key component of that, democracy, who's left to determine the rules of the game, the changes? We ultimately leave it to the money holders. And that's not where government should be. Government should continue to be what we've advocated, what we've taught our children, a government by the people, for the people. Thank you.
Hey, Dwight, thanks for traveling down here all the way to, not your hometown church, but your welcome. Down here in town, we want to get to know you better and so forth. In your literature, you emphasize your school and educational efforts and so forth, and one of them is that you'd like to see the state do away with the FCAT.
Absolutely.
For evaluating the learning abilities of children. How would you go about that with all the various school boards and so forth? You couldn't legislate that in Tallahassee, could you?
Well, there's two things, and this sort of speaks to my ability to work across the aisle. When I got wind that the other side of the aisle was not a fan of the FCAT, they're becoming less and less fans of the FCAT. One of the things I worked on was Representative John Lay back in 2010 was creating a pathway for the FCAT to be phased out. And it was via intercourse exams. We wanted to bring on intercourse exams as a means of testing children based on what you learned in the class that you were in. So working with Representative Lay and working with others, we were able to phase out the need for the math component of the FCAT with then Senator Ford. Come to find out that through, of course, backdoor politics and those things being what they are, there's sort of been a ramping up of the desire to have it. So for the last 3 years, I've filed 2 different alternatives to the FCAT. We do understand children need to be assessed. We get that. But to assess somebody, you have to understand it's like a diagnosis. All of us go here to the doctor and get tested, right? When we get tested, we expect the doctor to then give us a remedy for what ails us. If we have a headache, high blood pressure, heart disease, we expect some sort of remedy for what that is. And I proposed remedies to the FCAT as well, because it needs to be diagnostic and not punitive the way it is.
Representative Bullard is elected to the Senate. What one bill would you sponsor dealing with the cost of windstorm insurance in Monroe County?
Well, the one bill, you know, we have a limited bill as senators, is I like what FERC has been doing here in terms of trying to create a local means of you know, assessing windstorm insurance. But I think we need to take it a step further. The reality is that those that offer windstorm insurance, the state farms and all states of the world, who have really been pulling themselves out of Florida, need to be brought back to the table. But they need to be brought back to the table in a very real way. You can take a carrot and stick approach, but the reality is this: if they're going to assess you car insurance, if they're going to assess you fire insurance, property insurance, all these different things, then guess what? They need to also do windstorm and be willing to do so. So what I would propose ultimately is an exchange, a private exchange that would require them that if they're going to offer up insurance, they need to offer up the entirety of insurance packages and not expect people to pick and choose. If they're going to allow us to pick and choose certain insurances, they also need to begin offering windstorm as well.
So just to be clear, the bill would say that if you write property insurance in the state of Florida, you're required to write windstorm insurance?
For layman's terms, it's saying if you're going to play in the state of Florida, if you're going to insure anything, then you need to insure everything.
In all counties?
In all counties.
Question for Ron. Looking at the list of contributors to yourself and your opponent, frequently it tells where you're coming from. What does it say about you and your list of contributors? What does your opponent's list say about him?
Well, I think it expresses my view that I have an open door and open mind. You know, I've always been open to people with regards to the issue because you don't want to prejudge those. If somebody wants to contribute to a campaign, it's kind of hard to judge their motivation. I know my motivation. My motivation is to be a good public official, which is why I've been elected down here 7 times. And my contributions and my expenditures are public records, and I certainly can defend any of them. I think I have a pretty broad base of support from unions to business interests. And I think that's an indication of the kind of the legislator I've been, that I come in there and say, if you have an issue, come talk to me. Yeah, I'm not going to prejudge your issue. You come and tell me what you want. We've been successful in fundraising. I was one of the top fundraisers in the state in the last period. But I think it's because people are watching the candidates. They're saying, yeah, one, I think that. It's just because I've had a long experience with a lot of people in Tallahassee. And I think it's reflective of the fact that they now support me.